Hello everyone, I am Marcelo Walay, a student of BSc English, and for today's video, we are going to talk about the story of Little Red Riding Hood by Charles Perrault. So before we proceed, let's further discover more or tackle more about the story. So Little Red Riding Hood is a European fairy tale written by Charles Perrault. Its origin can be traced back to the several pre-17th century European folktale. Little Red Riding Hood is is the story about a little girl named Little Red Riding Hood, who was sent by her mother to visit her ill grandmother to the woods. Along her journey or along her way, Little Red Riding Hood encountered the wolf, which she easily trusted, not knowing that the wolf is cunning and sly and planning to devour her and her grandmother. So the wolf tricked her and hid at Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother and devoured her grandmother. Meanwhile, Little Red Riding Hood arrived and she was devoured by the wolf as well. So we have here the characters. We have here Little Red Riding Hood, the protagonist of the story. She is a young girl who wears a red hooded cloak. We have here the wolf, the antagonist of the story. He is a cunning and sly predator who wants to eat Little Red Riding Hood. And we also have here Little Red Riding Hood's grandmother, a character who lives in a cottage in the woods. She is the target of wolf's deception. So in the other version of the story, story Little Red Riding Hood by the Grimm's brother, we also have the huntsman who saved both of them. But since we are tackling about the Little Red Riding Hood version of Charles Perrault, this is the main characters of this story. So we have here the setting. The setting of the story is at the forest and at the house of Little Red Riding Hood grandmother. The details and images used in the story creates a sense and vivid picture of the forest and its danger. The forest is described as thick, dark, and with great trees and deep shadows. This description creates an image of dense and animous forest that is both unfamiliar and dangerous. So through the story, we can encounter there the description of the forest that is thick and dark. That simply means, and we also have there the deep shadow. That simply means the forest has a danger leaking through the forest. We also have the plot. The story's details, imagery, and create a sense of danger and intrigue that makes the plot interesting. The story is simple, but the way in which the plot elements are presented creates a sense of suspense and intrigue that keeps the reader engaged. For instance, the tension and danger built as Little Red Riding Hood makes her way through the forest. The reader knows that the wolf is nearby. So through reading the story, I was actually I actually felt a bit sorry, or I didn't actually feel that danger because through reading I felt that how come Little Red Riding Hood is that foolish for being too trusting to the wolf without even, of course, if I were Little Red Riding Hood, you should ask first, before entertaining a stranger. And it's supposed to be like, do not trust, my gosh, do not trust easily. Don't be trusting easily because it might lead to the despair of an individual. But the plot is actually good. I felt entertained, and I felt different emotions. I felt pity. I felt the danger leaking to the forest throughout the story. We also have here the style. The author's story is characterized by its simplicity and directness. The language used is straightforward and easy to understand with a focus on clarity and conciseness. So throughout the story, it's easily understandable For instance, the author used a simple phrases or simple definitions to define a certain thing or a certain object. It's very clear and understandable for readers, for children to read the story. Anyway, the story is open for all ages, of course. Children, teenagers can read this story because it's quite good. There's a moral lesson at the end, which is its main theme is for girls. So let's go back to the style. The authors uses a descriptive language and create a vivid details and images of then characters and settings. For instance, the forest is described as thick and dark, which creates a sense of danger. The description of Little Red Riding Hood's hooded cloak also adds to her distinctiveness as a character. Additionally, the author also uses repetition and rhyme to create a sense of rhythm and pattern in the story. The repetition of certain phrases such as little girl and grandmother. So we have here the theme that I was mentioning a while ago, the danger of being too trusting. It's the main theme of the story, since this story is for girls, made especially for girls, of being too trusting. There's a quote that children should never talk to strangers, for if they should do, they may well provide dinner for a wolf. If I say wolf, there are various kinds of wolves. There are those who are charming, who are quiet, polite, complacent, and of course sweet, who pursues young women in streets. And unfortunately, it is these gentle wolves who are the most dangerous of all. So, yes, this story is made especially for girls. A reminder for them for not to be trusting, especially to men, because women are sometimes being too trusting, and they give up everything for a man that is not without even knowing who the person really is. So sometimes people should be cautious, especially women, because they were the who are the main target of these cunning wolves. Not when I say cunning wolves, not specifically a wolf, but it could be a person. Who is very sweet at first, then at last you will know that that person is not so good as you knew at first. So we have here the understanding of moral lesson. The story emphasizes the importance of following advice and being cautious when interacting with strangers. The story serves as cautionary reminder to children about the consequences of disobedience and naivety. So, yeah, you have to follow advice. Like, for instance, I remember when we were kid, our parents always said to us that you have to go home early because there's a so-called kumaw, which is I was frightened. As a kid, of course, I have to go home early because of that cautionary from my parents, advice from my parents. And that made me a very good child, child when I was way back when I was a still child at the primary level, of course. That's one example of being cautious and following advice from our parents. We also have here the engagement through narratives. Fairy tales is a simple narrative, and the main purpose of fairy tales is to entertain and to inform or teach a lesson. It is an effective tool for capturing children's attention as it encourages children in using their imagination. Fairy tales can also help children develop emotionally by exposing them to different emotions. As of course, as you read through the story, you will feel different emotions like you were at that moment, especially at the forest, the intriguing moment of the encounter of the wolf and Little Red Riding Hood. You will feel different emotions. And I felt pity actually of Little Red Riding Hood, as I mentioned earlier, because she is too trusting. My gosh, if I were her, I wouldn't trust that so easily, because you have to know first a certain individual before trusting, because being too trusting leads into your despair. Of course, also this story is helps expose children to different emotions and helps their imagination to expound beyond, not only in real world but also in their imagination. Their logical reasoning might function, or not just might, but it will function actually. Their imagination will expound more as they read throughout the story. So we have here the language development. It can help children develop their vocabulary as it introduces them new words which can help expound their vocabulary. The story can also help children develop their grammar skills as they read or listen to the correct use of tenses and the sentence structure. So in reading the story, children may encounter new words to them. Of course, not all children is not that advanced to grammar or the sentence structure, which could not only entertain them, but they can learn through reading the story itself. That's all, everyone, and thank you very much for listening, and have a good day ahead.